So good morning. I'm Kathy Taylor. I write the social media insider column for MediaPost, and for some reason I seem to do a lot of conferences too. I'm not really sure how that happened because I don't really consider myself a conference presenter person, but I think that's what I'm quickly becoming. So anyway, I'm very happy to have you here. This is the first presentation in the social track, and I have to admit, I was looking at the social track the other day, and I'm like, wow, we're kind of Facebook obsessed on this social track. And maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing, but they are kind of the 800-pound gorilla of the, of the space. So I guess that's apropos. So our first presentation here is going to be, about one of the things that I find kind of intriguing about Facebook is that there's all this stuff going on underneath the cover, so to speak, that's really interesting, while in kind of typical fashion for an internet company that's gone public and not had a great IPO, that's what everybody focuses on. So there's kind of a potentially a big disconnect there in terms of how you should view this if you're a marketer, and the share price probably shouldn't have all that much to do with it. So the person who's going to explain this all to us is Rory Maher from Capstone Investments. I'm going to read his bio. He's a senior internet e-commerce analyst, and he has over 15 years of experience as an internet media analyst and an entrepreneur. And he began his career in equity research at Prudential Securities and Robertson Stephens, and most recently covered internet at Hudson Square Research. He's also the #1 ranked StarMine analyst in 2011 for earnings estimate accuracy. So we're gonna rely on Rory here. I'm gonna put my money in whatever Rory says. And he graduated from Colby College, which I think is like liberal arts. So I don't know, what that has to do with financial analysts. But he is a chartered financial analyst designation. So come on up, Rory, please, and give him a round of applause. Thank you.
Morning. No, I think that's fine. As Kathy mentioned, I'm Rory Maher, the senior internet analyst at Capstone Investments, and I assure you, to kick off an exciting social media conference, I'm not going to talk about a lot of boring financial data and analysis, but I am here to talk a little bit about the disconnect between Wall Street and Madison Avenue, the different ways those two industries view social media like Facebook, and most importantly, ways that advertisers can capitalize on the platform that you might not be reading about in the press. So just to begin, I think the jury's out, and at this stage, it's clear that Wall Street has given the thumbs down to social media advertising, at least thus far. When you look at two of the more well-known social media stocks, Facebook and LinkedIn, since Facebook went public, they're down 42%. And LinkedIn is up 25% over the same period. Now, Facebook makes about 95% of their revenue from advertising, whereas LinkedIn makes 25% of the revenue from advertising, the rest being from licenses that corporations pay to use their data, as well as premium subscriptions. When you look at the price, the multiple that the two stocks are trading at, that also tells the same story. You've got Facebook trading at 20 times 2013 EV to EBITDA, whereas LinkedIn trades at 49 times 2013 EV to EBITDA. So what that says is investors are willing to pay about over twice as much for LinkedIn with its diversified social media model as they are to pay for Facebook with its almost purely advertising-driven model. As Kathy mentioned, much of the focus since Facebook went public has been IPO mechanics. The company increased the number of shares as well as the offering price while they were on the roadshow, basically pitching their story to Wall Street investors. At the same time, halfway through the roadshow, they decreased their guidance, which is essentially the forecast they're telling investors about how they think the business is going to perform. And then finally, on the day of trading, NASDAQ had a well-publicized technological glitch that caused some disconnects between bid orders and buy orders. I won't bore you with all the Wall Street mechanics. And as a result, the stock has not performed well, and a lot of investors felt duped. So while most of the press attention has been on that, in the meantime, there are ways that advertisers can get quite a bit of value out of Facebook. We spend a lot of time speaking with advertisers, as well as analyzing different campaigns and using our own proprietary software to measure the use on Facebook, how users use it, and how certain ad campaigns perform. And we'll get into some conversion rates in the beginning, but the metric that most advertisers still use is click-through rates. And when you look at Facebook, the targeting has driven among some of the highest click-through rates online. Their marketplace ads, which is essentially their run-of-network ads, get click-through rates about 50% higher than the average online banner ads, so that's pretty telling as well. But when you dig into some of their more unique inventory of mobile in particular, out of tens of millions of impressions that we analyzed, it's driving about 1.2% click-through rates, which is exponentially higher than the average online banner ad. So clearly some good performance there. They have different types of targeting, which I think advertisers can take advantage of beyond newsfeed and sponsored post ads. Trending is a very well-performing category, driving about just under 1% click-through rates, which, as you all know, are very, very high when compared to other ad formats. The jury is still out on what the value of a like is. If advertisers can determine that and best harness the ROI, I think that'll be probably the best performing product on Facebook and probably the most interesting proposition for advertisers. But for now, the jury is out exactly what a like is worth. We worked with AdParlor that sells Facebook advertising, and we analyzed about 2 million clicks. And in addition to having high click-through rates, Facebook advertising is actually proven to very well convert users that click through to become fans of a brand page. And what that tells me is that the users that are engaging most with Facebook ads are very high quality because they then convert fans once they get to the page. So if advertisers can continue to harness those most active, engaged users on Facebook, I think they should see increasing ROI on their campaigns. Now, there's a perception out there that Facebook is kind of like an online flea market where people basically go to browse pictures, to check in on old girlfriends, old boyfriends, essentially perform activities that are historically not seen as being good to advertise against. And I think the reality is that it's actually quite different from that. And I looked at a study from Pew Research, which basically surveyed millions of social media users, and what they found is that over 60% of use on Facebook is meant to either stay in touch with direct friends or family, or to reconnect with friends and family that you might have lost touch with. So I think the reality is actually there are quite a bit of intimate connections being made on Facebook. The majority of use illustrates that. So I think it goes against the perception that this isn't a good place to advertise on. I think if advertisers can find the best ways to harness and interact with those intimate connections, they'll start to see very good results. And I don't know if you can see this at the very far right, but anyone who's going on Facebook to find a potential romantic or dating partner, the news is not good. Only about 3% of Facebook use is meant for that, or users view it that way. In addition, I think another buzzword that's thrown around a lot on Madison Avenue is word of mouth at scale. And while that's an interesting buzzword, I think it actually is the reality. If you look at a study from Comscore, they calculated what is called the amplification ratio. And basically what that is if you buy a unit and it reaches a direct number of people, those people can refer that ad to their friends. And the amplification ratio is basically the number of friends that they refer that ad to divided by the number of people that have been directly paid for. And you can see why that's important, because it's free impressions. It really is what word of mouth is meant to be. What they found, they analyzed 10 of the largest brands on Facebook, MTV, Disney, Converse, all well-known brands, and they found that the amplification ratio exceeded 1 for 60% of the campaigns of these brands, meaning that they reached more friends of friends than they actually reached and paid for directly. So I think that's pretty meaningful, and I think as advertisers start to see those results more, you'll see them better harness the platform. Of course, a lot of this depends on creative. We'll get into that in a minute, but what you'll find on Facebook in particular, this is the same with all social networks, is the type of creative that you put together really impacts the performance of your campaign. Now, again, as I mentioned, we have our own proprietary software that analyzes use on Facebook, and we also made a number of calls to advertisers as well as many of the top 100 Ad Age advertisers. And some of the more interesting things we found that might not be known or really kind of talked about much is the usage and performance of advertising that are driven by events. And what I mean is not necessarily an event on Facebook, but an event out there that the world views, it's popular, everyone's focused on it. As it ties into Facebook, you see the performance on Facebook significantly improve. So we looked at 8 weeks of several very large campaigns on Facebook around the Olympics. The Olympics running on week 5 and 6. What we found is that right when the Olympics started, click-through rates immediately jumped, 3 to 5 times in many cases. And then the minute the Olympics were done, promptly plummeted. At the same time, we noticed that 48 of the top 500 brands increased their fans by 10% during that month. Likely, a lot of that paid advertising. So what that tells us is that users are becoming more engaged as events tie to the platform. And as a result, they're clicking more into ads, they're participating more with each other. And I think that's a great opportunity for brands to tie into. In addition, and more importantly likely, is that usage increased across the board significantly. So this is between July 15th and August 15th, with the Olympics running from July 27th to August 12th. And basically every single region across the world increased their users the most of any month in 2012. With the exception of Canada, and I have no idea why their citizens do not seem to be as passionate about the Olympics as the rest of the world. Are there any Canadians in here? Maybe you can shed some light on it. Latin America was the biggest increaser, and if you follow it on a real-time basis, we actually saw the biggest spikes right on July 27th through the 12th. And what that tells me is that, one, as we said, users are more engaged during events, but actually, when events get tied into Facebook, you'll see people going to the platform that weren't there, and those users are more engaged than those that have been on Facebook for a long time. So advertisers are going to want to pay attention to these events as they kind of drive more usage on Facebook, and they're going to want to get in front of these users when they first join and are most active and most engaged. Some of the more interesting data we saw were how some brands did recognize this and prepared for it and seized it. As we mentioned, if you look at the number of brands that likely spent a lot on acquiring fans in the period, during the month of July 15th to August 15th, which is when the Olympics occurred, we found that 48 brands increased the number of fans by 10% during that period. And as you know, if you're going to increase your fans by that much in that short period of time, you're going to have to pay for it. That was about 50% more than the following month, which was 32. And keep in mind that following month is back to school period, so the Olympics likely had a greater brand impact on Facebook than going back to school did. That translates that we estimate to about $57 million in spend acquiring fans from those 48 brands that we talked about from July 15th to August 15th, and that's about 50% higher than $39 million from August 15th to September 15th. So some brands recognize the opportunity, definitely seized on it, saw the results, and we think over time, as more events kind of get folded into Facebook, you'll see similar activity. So, some of the events that we look at, political, that's one that's right around the corner. That's actually been going, as you all know, been going on for months, and the advertisers we speak with indicate to us that Facebook is amongst the biggest beneficiaries of political spending online. I know that some candidates in certain months put almost all their online budgets into Facebook. And the reason why is they want to seize people while they're on Facebook being active, talking about politicians and the elections. And I think you'll start to see that with more events. Right now, you don't see that much on Facebook, but with a lot of media coverage for events like the Grammys, the Super Bowl for sure, and I'm sure you've all noticed, at the bottom of the screen, you go to Facebook.com. In addition to that, you're seeing individuals, athletes, drive people to their pages. World Cup is going to be a big one, the Grammys for sure. So you've got, yes, people are tweeting, but artists also quite a bit use their Facebook page, and they're directing people during those events. I don't know if Oktoberfest is necessarily seen as an international event, but I always wanted to go, so I threw it in there. Now, another interesting kind of data that I've looked at that tells me a lot about where Facebook is in its trajectory as a company, which is also important to marketers, is to look at the mix of types of advertisers. And you can get a sense for kind of where they are in their maturity. And what I mean by that is that we looked at different fan increases every single month, as I said, and we can get a pretty good idea of what types of brands are spending on Facebook. And we found that right now, about 47% of the top brand spend on Facebook, we estimate, is coming from retail categories, with the second and third largest being media and entertainment, and then finally beverage. Now, what you'll find in the past with a lot of online publishers is these are the three categories that typically dive in first, are more willing to get into a new type of media, a new type of platform than some of the larger, more blue chip type advertisers, for lack of a better word. So you look at auto and telecom, each account for about 3% of large brand spending on Facebook, and then you don't even see consumer packaged goods there. So what that tells me is that we're in the very early stages of Facebook as a brand platform and as a company as a whole, and that over time, as they better define their ad products, as they get a better sense for how to work with Madison Avenue and help them optimize their campaigns, you'll see auto advertisers coming to the table, telecom advertisers coming to the table, and consumer packaged goods advertisers coming to the table. And when that happens, I think you'll start to see a real acceleration in spending on Facebook, as well as revenue acceleration. Some of the new products coming down the pike that we find most interesting that were announced in the last month or so includes an ad exchange and an ad network. Facebook has been testing an ad exchange that they just rolled out with a beta with a number of different advertisers. We were fortunate enough to speak with some of them. And what we found is that it's an incredible remarketing platform, and right now it's performing better than some of the competing exchanges. So conversion rates, for instance, have been 50% plus higher than on competing exchanges, and that basically is, for those who are not remarketing specialists, when someone goes to your site and then does not buy a product, for example, or doesn't perform some kind of action, Facebook can follow them on Facebook's site with an ad basically asking them to come back and finally go through with that action. And they're seeing basically 50% higher rates converting those customers who did not buy or perform some action, actually converting them to doing that action. Now, just to be clear, the prices on the exchange are 70% discount to some of the competing exchanges, and that's going to normalize over time as you get more advertisers, more inventory on board, and advertisers start to Facebook starts to get a little leverage with the advertising community, so to speak. So you'll see that normalize. In addition to that, they've just started rolling out a test of a mobile ad network. Keep in mind that they have newsfeed ads now, which goes through their app, and that's essentially their way of monetizing mobile. But I think they recognize that they need to kind of step up more than that and create a way to increase the amount of inventory that they make available to advertisers that want to advertise on mobile. The way they've done that is they've tapped into the mobile ad exchanges like Mobclicks and a number of others. So they're not actually building a mobile ad network, but they're providing inventory into the exchanges with their own proprietary data that then networks like One Media, JumpTap, AdMob, the usual suspects can go and bid on, buy, and then distribute on their own networks, cutting Facebook in with some of the revenue. Now, we followed up with some major agencies and kind of got their thoughts on what this could mean, and I think the consensus is that the type of targeting that Facebook is able to provide, the information that its user uploads to the site and provides to them is light years ahead of where mobile targeting is right now. And I think the consensus is that that's definitely inventory you're going to want to buy. In addition to that, it's going to increase rates significantly for mobile networks as a whole. Those are just getting started now, but over time we expect both these to perform pretty well and become a more meaningful part of the business, and also diversify the ways that advertisers can work both with Facebook on Facebook.com, as well as use some of the data to put larger campaigns outside of Facebook.com, which I think a lot of advertisers have been talking about. Now, just to get into some of the less robust parts of the platform that I think either needs work or is a potential risk for marketers that you want to know about, because it's early days and everything's not perfect here. Privacy is the one that everyone talks about. Now, keep in mind the reason why Facebook is so effective is that we all provide them with very intimate personal information about ourselves. So the example I always like to use is if you want to reach a divorced man in their 50s that attended an Ivy League college, live in Illinois, and love fly fishing, they can actually do that for you because we tell them that we love fly fishing. We tell them that we went to this college. They obviously know where we live. So us giving information like that to Facebook is incredibly central to their strategy. And I think a lot of advertisers are a little nervous about that, as they should be. The one silver lining I would say is that for now it seems like people think they're concerned about privacy, but their actions tell a different story. So University of St. Andrews conducted a pretty interesting survey where they asked people how important privacy was to them on a scale of strong, medium to low. And they actually found an inverse of what people's thoughts of privacy meant in terms of how much they share, and they used their location as a perfect example. So basically what they found was those users who had the strongest passion of how private they wanted to be were actually sharing their location the most. And it literally went inverse. We're medium in terms of how important privacy is to you, sharing your location on a medium level. And those who basically said they didn't really care about privacy much really weren't sharing their location. So I think as long as the user behavior continues in this way, as you all know, the consumer, the user decides where the ad dollar goes, decides where the audience goes, and as long as they continue to have this philosophy, I think privacy will continue to be an interesting thing to talk about, but I don't think it's something that's all of a sudden going to have the wool, the rug pulled out of marketers from underneath them. In addition, as I said before, the type of creative that you use is incredibly important. We worked with Spruce Media, another leading seller of Facebook advertising, and looked at 3 different types of creative per different campaigns. It's interesting that there was a presentation here before that cited this first kind of creative, and I think what most marketers tend to do is, which we call an average page post, is they have a picture of their product, they have a couple lines that's basically sales related, buy this, et cetera, and then they provide a link that you can click through to go through their product. We found that more impactful ways of using the creative is to use a call to action and to limit the amount of discussion about your sales product, essentially to make the ad look as much like a regular piece of content than advertising. And one way of doing that is to not include a link to an outside page. So if you look at the good page post creative, that was the picture. There was some Samsung mobile branding on the top, but the actual text only mentioned the product. So it was less of a sales pitch than the first one, and there was no link that caused people to leave Facebook, which basically screamed advertiser. And what they found was that the conversion rate from that average post was 3 times higher, from that good page post was 3 times higher than the average page post. To go even further, we looked at what we call an excellent page post, which basically doesn't have any sales literature on it, except for, in this case, a phone. And the only thing it has is a Samsung mobile link on the top with a place that you can actually engage and participate in the content. And really interestingly, we found that the conversion rates for those ads were actually 5 times higher than the average page post. So again, it's early days. I think Facebook itself is still trying to figure this out. Marketers are still trying to figure this out as well. But I think as marketers go towards the data, and if we start to see more conversion rates like this, we'll start to see ads resemble the excellent page post. And I would urge most marketers to use that advice because the numbers have definitely proven true. That just basically putting up an ad on there with your typical sales pitch and a link just isn't going to work with social media as it might work with other types of platforms and sites. In addition, we think ad fatigue could be an issue here. You remember most news feeds ads run alongside cheaper marketplace ads. So if you're on Facebook, you could very well see a little ad coming through your news feed as well as 4 or 5 different ads on your right rail. And if they start increasing the efficiency of those newsfeed posts, which they inevitably are with some of their new products, some of their new products guarantee reaching some of your fans. In order to do that, you have to artificially pump these posts through the newsfeed so that you get the required amount that you told the advertiser. You need to be careful with that because if you're doing that, a user could potentially see your page post many different times until they get the required amount of clicks. In addition to that, keep in mind that we've got newsfeed on mobile now, and as well as we've got a logout ad, which in this case is it's actually a video ad for Titanic. So at some point, users could be seeing the same ad wherever they go on Facebook. And I think probably the biggest risk for Facebook now is this ad fatigue issue. And it's also the biggest risk for marketers, because basically if marketers don't win, Facebook doesn't win, so the interests are aligned. I think that's some of the reasons why you're seeing types of things like the mobile ad network that you can tap into, and it basically incorporates their own data to basically sell ads off of Facebook.com. I think over time, more advertisers are going to recognize that as well and put together campaigns that not only cover Facebook.com as well as perhaps the mobile app, but also leverage some of the newer products like their mobile ad network to get on other sites. Now, just to quickly go over some of the other social networks, as Kathy mentioned correctly, when you talk about social media, it really is understandably about Facebook. They own a major part of the market, and for right now, for advertisers at least, that want to reach a lot of consumers, they really are kind of the only game in town. Looking at Twitter, which is a social network that a lot of people expect to grow to be nearly the size of Facebook and potentially compete the most for advertising dollars with the company. We used our proprietary software, and we analyzed probably about 40,000 to 50,000 articles online, and we looked at the social networks that are driving the most shares online. So if you go to a site, you read an article, you can say share with Facebook, it goes through your newsfeed. You could share with Twitter, stumble upon any social network you want. We got into that and basically analyzed who shared the most. And what we found is Facebook is blowing everyone else away. They're driving about 77% of total shares online. The reason why that's important is I think the type of content that your users share tells a lot about who they are, what they're passionate about, and what they're engaged the most in. And if you can start understanding that, I think it dictates the types of advertisers that are going to find these services the most effective. Now, whereas 70% of total shares were driven by Facebook versus 12 for Twitter, which was second, what we interestingly found was when we looked at Yahoo News as compared to more general entertainment sites like Cracked, Huffington Post Politics, and Engagement, it literally flip-flopped. 76% of the shares were driven by Twitter versus 20 for Facebook. Now, and what that tells me is Facebook is more like TV, more entertainment type of content for now, versus Twitter, which is more of a newswire, because that's what the users are engaging with most. The reason why that's important is I think that means that the types of advertisers that are going to find Twitter most effective are probably not the types of advertisers that are going to find Facebook most effective. So the two aren't exactly butting heads right now. But I do know from my ongoing research in the industry that Twitter is looking for a way to tap into this. And I know for a couple of years now they've been testing different ad products that incorporate their power of basically driving tweets while you're watching TV. If you analyze, people's tweets, they spike when they're watching TV. So if you can tie those two together, then all of a sudden you've got a proposition for the branding advertisers that typically would advertise on TV, and it's not just seen as a newswire type product. However, as you all know, that's a big proposition, and while they're trying to get into TV, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are. But that's kind of where they stand for now. Another social network service, Foursquare, it's pretty funny. I was here advertising a couple of years ago, and I remember the CEO and a senior executive from Foursquare were on stage, and they were touting at the time, I believe it was about 1 million users, and which is incredibly impressive for a startup. And they were basically up there telling the advertising world, we're reaching 1 million users now. Let the floodgates begin. And I was sitting next to a fairly senior advertising executive who chuckled. And the reason why is that 1 million users is absolutely nothing as an avenue. In fact, while they've had amazingly impressive growth of 6 million users, even 6 million users really isn't going to get the attention of a large advertiser who wants to reach a lot of people. So basically, I think Foursquare has a very strong presence in local. They recently released a product called Updates, where brands can send information on themselves to users that have showed they like the brand or have checked into some of their stores quite a bit. And I think it's pretty clear to me that over time they're going to start charging for that service. The problem, in my opinion, is that it's too niche right now for large advertisers to come to the table. So the end result is that while it's clear from the data that I've been looking at that Facebook's still trying to figure it out, they're making some inroads. They're not quite there yet, but for the time being and for the foreseeable future, it's going to be the largest place for advertisers to reach users on social media. So going through some of these ways of being more effective, I think are pretty practical. So on the last page, I need an analyst to give my disclosures. I do not own any Facebook stock. Capstone Investments does not do any investment banking. I think that's all. But so I have no intention of being very positive on Facebook stock, except I do have a buyout. Thank you very much.
I'm just gonna read the disclosure document to you all. No, I'm kidding. Now, does anybody have any questions for Rory? I'm not gonna let you go, Rory. I'm not letting you go. You get up there. So, one thing I've been curious about, and I think probably other people have been too, is the whole the high click-through rates that not just Facebook is seeing with mobile, but Twitter as well. And some, of course, the positive one would be like, well, they are more engaging. The negative would be, wow, that this is a novelty. I've even heard people say that people see ads in their news feed on their mobile device, and they click on it not realizing it's an ad. So their savviness hasn't caught up with the reality. So I wondered if you could put any context around that.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I've been hearing the same things, and just being on my phone, I find that the similar phenomenon. Definitely, part of it is novelty. Part of it is actually that not just in addition to those page posts, but just mobile advertising in general tends to take up a larger part of the page if you click through. And then obviously, or not obviously, some of it is just people accidentally clicking through those ads. But I think the good thing is that it's now so much higher than PC that even as it does normalize, I do think that the targeting, the location-based technologies that mobile provides will lead to higher click-through rates and better engagement as they basically, I don't want to, for lack of a better word, figure it all out, but just the data that's out there that you put in your phone that they have, history has shown with better data like that leads to better returns from advertising, better rates. So I think that while you will see some gravitation to the mean, the click-through rates are so high right now, and in addition, they're better targeting those ad products. So I do expect mobile to remain a better, in terms of return on investment, advertising media than PC.
Okay, that's interesting. Do we have other? Oh, okay. Wait, hold on. Okay, I'm going to run my high heels now. Do this like once every month. Okay.
I have a quick question regarding the CPM on Facebook is still really high compared to other marketplace ads, and just the mobile inventory is really small compared to other ads. How do you think it will change in the near future, like the first Q for next year? I mean, like Twitter, basically their mobile advertising solution is much more robust than Facebook. So what do you anticipate for next year?
Well, I don't know if Twitter's mobile advertising is more robust than Facebook. I mean, I think Facebook's on their last earnings call said that their mobile business was on something like a $300 million annual run rate, which I think is much bigger than Twitter. So, I think it's a misperception, in my opinion, that Twitter is a better mobile advertising platform than Facebook. In terms of CPMs, you're right. They do garner pretty solid CPMs. I think that those will remain pretty high, though, because they do generate better ROI for advertisers. We went through some of the click-through rates and the conversion rates in this presentation. And whenever you have that type of targeting and return, I think your rates stay higher than competing platforms. And a lot of it has to do with the actual information that we're giving them that other sites don't necessarily have. Other sites, like Yahoo, for instance, they do have a decent amount of information on their users, but they have to use behavioral targeting technology and kind of analyze where they serve and use these different data points to then come up with some kind of conclusion on who they are and what kind of demographics they fit in. Whereas with Facebook, they're literally just being told by their users, here who we are, here's our information, here are our demographics. So I do think that, yes, CPM probably will come down somewhat as they test more products, but I think overall, over the long term, they're going to get better rates than some of their competitors.
And also, if you have questions, say your name and title. I'll keep saying that for the next 2 days. I was also kind of wondering with, you know, the ad network and all the other kind of ad products they're coming out with, whether you hear any concern from advertisers about them kind of jumping the gun on some of these products because there's the pressure to, you know, to actually show real revenue gains. I mean, is there any sign that they're doing that, or are they still playing a very cautious game when they roll things out?
You know, I wouldn't read too much into the fact that they launched a bunch of products since they've gone public. I mean, we really don't know what they're doing behind the scenes. We can't put ourselves in their heads. A lot of it might have to do that simply going public is an incredibly intensive experience that takes, you know, basically the CEO, the CFOs, and most of the senior execs' attention for a solid year. So, unfortunately, they probably were focusing quite a bit on that. But that being said, you know, some of the comments that Mark Zuckerberg made since going public, and I'm obviously intimately close to all this, does indicate that I think he realized during that whole process he might have been, I don't want to say too precious or coy, but he was pretty, you know, openly almost thumbing his nose at Wall Street in terms of, you know, he sent out an email after going public. I don't know if you guys recall this, but I certainly do, where he emailed every single Facebook user and said something like, the geniuses on Wall Street are telling us we need to make money, and we all know the only way to make money is when your users are drunk and they click on ads. So, you know, it's hard to tell exactly what his mind is, but I believe it's probably at some degree catering to pressure on Wall Street. He has to motivate his employees. If employees see their stock value plummeting, they might leave and go to another company. So it's more than just keeping the stock price high. So I would say there is a risk to that, but you know, at the same time, these are things that need to be done. There's low-hanging fruit that needs to basically be captured, and as long as they do it in the way they historically have, which is focusing on users first, I think, you know, generally you won't see it implode on them.
Okay. I think we have one more question.
Hi, I'm Sarah Zaperi, VP of Sales for Playwright Media. I want to know what the future of Facebook credits or virtual currency on Facebook is going to be.
Well, I mean, the future is that they're not going to be credits anymore. They're going to be actual paid transactions. So they sunsetted their credits program recently, and now are facilitating basically just the actual transaction. You just pay with credit card information. And what that indicates to me is that they see a real payment business there beyond just you know, buying goods on Facebook. That being said, in the past, it hasn't proven very well. They used to enable brands to have their own stores on Facebook, and they got rid of that. You used to be able to book a Delta flight on Delta's Facebook page, and some brands had their entire catalog on there. What happened was the demand just wasn't very strong, so they actually sunsetted that, which tells you actually that Facebook's not a good platform for buying things. That being said, I think Facebook is becoming a more trustworthy brand, and when people used Facebook credits in the past, they input their credit card information. Now that they've changed credits where it's just a transactional processing, you can see as more people put their credit cards into that, when you go to another site and say, you know, pay with PayPal, it could equally just say pay with Facebook. It's the same thing. I think that's probably a more meaningful business for them, is to get off of Facebook, just like they're doing with their mobile ad data, and get people's need for convenience. Get them to start buying products off of Facebook, and I think that's where the real potential in their retail business lies.
Okay. Any other questions? It's interesting that retail is such a big category in terms of advertising when it's not really much of an e-commerce platform. Yeah.
Well, I think you're right. You could look at it that way. I think you could also say that retailers understand that it is going to ultimately become a pretty good platform, and they're preparing for that by buying OnlyFans. But I think, in my opinion, they're going to be disappointed because I don't think that I don't see how Facebook transforms itself into an Amazon or an eBay. To your point, I totally agree. To get people to buy products on Facebook.
Okay. Well, thanks, Rory. Please give Rory a round of applause. myself. So I'm going to ask our next panel to come up. And come on up, guys. Are they all here now, Gavin? So, yes, we have to actually unfold physical books here. So, okay. Yes, you're on the end. You're on the end. So we're going to continue with our Facebook theme here, and I think one thing among our obsession with Facebook is that I think at least I don't have to work with Facebook like these guys do, right? But I hear a lot from people who do work with Facebook that it's kind of a difficult thing, partly because the platform changes so much. I'm not saying that it's intentional. I'm just saying that it can be difficult. So on this panel, and there was a recent Facebook Policy Summit, which I know, Mike, you went to, right? I don't know some of the others where they. I don't know. Well, Mike will be able to tell us about the Facebook Policy Summit and what went down there. It sounds like it's a political convention to me, but what do I know? But at any rate, they're really trying to make themselves easier to work with and all that kind of thing. But I think all of these panelists have a lot of experience in terms of, just making sure that, they work with Facebook as easily as possible, and hopefully they feel comfortable sharing that information. So it can be easier for everybody. The moderator is Gavin O'Malley there with MacBook. He is one of the MediaPost reporters. So with that, I'm going to give it to Gavin, and please give them some applause. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us today. Is this thing on?
It is.
Okay. Yes, thanks for setting us up, Kathy. Yeah, we've got some policy wonks in the House today, but I wanted to start out by just trying to prove, this is my thesis, that policy doesn't necessarily have to be dry. So I was going through some top-level Facebook ad policies, and this is what I came up with. Quote, ads that promote or reference alcohol are prohibited in Afghanistan. Ads that promote dietary and herbal supplements are generally prohibited, provided they do not promote products containing anabolic steroids. Ads may not promote the sale or use of weapons, ammunition, or explosives. And under the title shock value, I found Facebook saying that ads may not be shocking. So, who knows what you guys are doing these days, but, it seems like you guys are getting into some interesting territory. So let's go down the line and introduce ourselves. Just tell the audience how you guys are getting into Facebook and Facebook policy.
Sure, I'm Mike Crew. I head up social media for Hill Holiday, a big advertising agency based in Boston. We also have an office here. I'm also the co-author of the book Social TV that looks at the convergence of television with social media.
I'm Steve Knapp, Director of Brand Activation at Carmichael Lynch in Minneapolis. For our client Subaru, we've been working extensively with Facebook over the past year and have developed numerous campaigns and ongoing platforms that have given tons of engagement and have helped grow us from about 75,000 likes to nearing 1 million.
I'm Chris Worley. I'm the Director of Experience Design at RAP here in New York. We do social campaigns on a weekly basis for all of our clients, building from small to large to one of the most recent ones where we've generated close to 4 million new faces per number.
Hey, I'm Jamie Tedford. I'm the founder and CEO of Brand Networks. We recently became one of the 12 strategic preferred developers for Facebook. I guess that means that we've done a pretty good job of policy. We specifically work to build applications for brands. We're an ads API partner, so we run ads. We're also a page management provider.
Thanks, guys. So yeah, Jamie, we were just speaking about some of the different agency outreach efforts that Facebook has made over the years, and I just thought from what I can count, early on you had the preferred developer community, then it moved on to Facebook Studio, the Brand Council, strategic preferred developer community, and this past July, if you guys saw it in the news, there was Facebook's Policy Summit, which involved 40 agency partners talking policy. So just want to get right into how you guys, and Facebook recently admitted that they weren't very good about making their policy known to the agency world. They themselves admitted that. So I want to hear from you guys down the line if you think that's been the case, or if you feel Facebook has, at least now, they're getting the word out better.
Yeah, so policies, as you can hear from the opening, really confusing because, first of all, Facebook, the platform, changes so fast, as you guys all know. So I did attend the Policy Summit, which was at Facebook's New York offices. What was great about it is they actually brought people that actually are writing the policies from the West Coast, the headquarters of Facebook, in to try and explain them, to try and present them. And they were extremely open about what was in development, what they needed to do better on, but also a take from their agency community, feedback on what they felt was working and what wasn't. So I found that to be particularly helpful, and it seems as though within the past, what I'd say 6 months to 10 months, Facebook is really making a big effort in partnering on a more strategic level with the advertising agency community.
Yeah, I'll echo the same thing. Like I said, in the past year we've been pretty aggressive in the space for our client Subaru. And if you kind of start with Facebook's model that they have on the wall of move fast and break things, a lot of things that don't tend to get broken end up getting broken. And while we haven't had any real big significant snafus or anything, we really found that sometimes the first door into Facebook is through their advertising sales channel. And a lot of times the advertising salespeople aren't quite sure of the policies and hearing that. So we've moved from really just an ad sales platform to a client partner. So all of our meetings now with Facebook have not only a client partner, advertising sales, but strategists and tech leads.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're moving towards a better model of working with agencies. I'm hoping it's not too little too late, because working kind of in the ground floor of agencies that they've just reiterate what you just said, of like they seem to have the first line of defense has been ad sales guys, especially recently with their new ad revenue model. And what we're hoping to engage a little bit more with is that a little bit more with them on how we can start developing their product in a bit more innovative way, how we can start utilizing those products in a bit more innovative way. We seem to be having to design and create things somewhat under the limitations of the past of Facebook, and having to go outside of Facebook and to create, for instance, a mobile experience, and then having to generate them back into the desktop version. So us all knowing the limitations somewhat currently, that hopefully it's a nice move forward, but it's just the beginning, because I think that there needs to be some more communication and more openness with agencies on what we're trying to accomplish, with brands, and ultimately for our users and for our user bases. I think that we have really in the past 5 years, obviously we've struggled somewhat with that, but in the past year or so it's been a bit more open. I personally would like to see them move to a bit more open source model, right? Of saying that bringing in, actually utilizing their platform as their platform exists currently, with generating users, their current users, and bringing in more of a crowdsourcing idea to product innovation.
So we see a lot of confusion around policy as well, and it's, I guess for me, the policies are all under a couple of guiding principles. One, which is create great user experiences, and two is be trustworthy. Those are the two principles that go on top of every policy. And so I think if you look at advertisers or marketers who've gotten into some trouble with the Facebook platform, you can universally look at it and say creativity got in the way of user experience. So the best example that I can think of was Burger King when the Remove a Friend Whopper promotion came out, Crispy Quarter, known to push the envelope in a really smart, creative campaign. Unfortunately, they broke terms of service, and it's very clear, it's very obvious, out there for everyone to read, and there's no secrets there. And the terms of service was you can't notify a user when they've been defriended. That is not within policy. That's not within the user experience that's expected from Facebook. And so Facebook, in order to protect the integrity of the platform, shut the application down. So I think if you look at every single violation that's been cited by brands or marketers or apps, typically it's rooted in an issue that could denigrate the integrity of the platform.
So has anyone here actually had a campaign shut down, or at least early stages gotten word that, you know, this is just not going to fly with Facebook, or at least know someone who has?
We had to shut a campaign down. It wasn't so much of a policy issue, it was an API issue where a couple of years ago we were doing some kind of a spin to win kind of fun thing for one of our clients, and the issue was the instability of the API. It kept going up and down, and so it was getting so much usage and so much load on the servers that when the API broke, it was creating issues. So at the end of the day, we had to just take it down because it just was not functioning in a stable manner, which was a big issue.
We haven't had any major issues like that. But I think a lot of that was because at the beginning we were going on things alone, and our campaigns maybe weren't as robust, and we did have people that understood and tried to keep up with policy. But at the same time, even things like updating to timeline, we weren't always aware of things like that. And while it's simple reformatting issues in our case, what Facebook needs to realize is that it costs us time, and that costs us money, and that's money that goes against clients' fees and retainers and profitability. So even things that may not have a huge impact can still have a negative impact on the agency and our client, which might make you reluctant to go deeper next time.
Yeah, we've never had anything shut down per se, but I think that I'm sure we've gone against policy.
Sorry to interrupt, Chris, but maybe, you know, client ideas that they've come to you with, you know, brilliant ideas in their mind, and you know, either you have to do a little bit of research, you know right away, oh, that's just not going to work.
Yeah, no, we've maybe not necessarily ideas from clients, but ideas internally, trying to push an idea. We've definitely have tried to, have been forced to scale it back as a result of policies. And in some cases they're right. In some cases we weren't necessarily right. We were just trying to push the envelope a little bit, and we should have scaled our idea back. In other cases, it would have been nice to have a bit more freedom.
A specific example come to mind?
Well, I think the idea of, you know, we have you know, some of the issues with the timeline of being, you know, how you utilize the timeline, and how we can start utilizing the timeline to push things to our users, and to push things to our the people that are interacting with our brands. And you know, we've had to scale back the design aspect of the timeline a bit, because, you know, for instance, in the timeline you can't really promote anything. You can promote it, but you can't link to it. You can't necessarily have you know, there's certain little things all throughout that you can't necessarily do that would really try to increase engagement, and as a result, in our opinion, we've had to decrease the engagement between our brand and our user base.
And I would say that we love the pace at which Facebook's platform changes. It's actually a huge benefit to us because we're
a small group, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we're so in it. That's our whole business is built on the Facebook platform. So when Facebook launches a new product or a new offering, Facebook Places, for example, we'll run around and create a bunch of ideas around that change. So, all right, let's take an idea to Starbucks. Let's take an idea to Walmart, because they should be leveraging this new part of the platform. Open Graph Objects was another one that recently was launched, and that's a little bit inside baseball, but if you're in that business, you realize that's an opportunity to own some part of the graph, and it'll put you into a whole new direction in terms of ideation. What verbs can we own? What's the areas of the graph that we can own for our brand? And I think, to me, that's where the creativity in the platform exists, or the opportunity. It's not necessarily take a campaign and try to translate it to Facebook, but look at what Facebook provides and try to build business driving ideas off of the new platform changes.
So that's good for you guys, but I mean, are you getting any pushback or any, are brands sort of getting maybe a little fed up with the changes, or they just maybe,
I mean, I think progressive brands want to be first, right? And when something new is pushed, it's a new challenge, right? And so we try to work with some really progressive and aggressive companies and brands out there. So American Express looks at an opportunity to own sort of social commerce and goes all in. They're not waiting to see what Groupon does or what other competitors might do. They created a thing called Link Like Love List that essentially is Groupon for social. And so I think it's a challenge for brands who aren't as adept or aren't as nimble. But for those who are committed, both with resources and dollars, they can win in their space by being the most aggressive.
Look, I would say progressive brands definitely want to be first, but also at the same time, they want to have a breather to be able to optimize what it is they're already doing. And we see all too often with our brands that we work with that they're just starting to get into the pace of learning how to optimize their content, and then all of a sudden, there's a change to timeline. There's a change to how the algorithm is actually weighting content, and that can be really confusing. So we try and work with them and stay one step ahead, but at the same time, it is changing at such a rapid rate, and that can be really difficult for brands to mobilize in that way.
So before we get onto the more practical issue of best practices, I just want to ask you guys, take any policy that's currently in existence and get rid of it and execute your ideal dream campaign. Say for just blanketing Facebook with a massive wallpaper ad or something.
So there's one policy that I didn't even realize was a policy until I went to the policy summit. There's a behavior that exists right now organically on Facebook that you've all seen, which is someone takes a picture of lots of different objects or things or words, and then people kind of tag the words of the picture that is most likely. It's a little meme that goes around, and we've all seen it. That is actually against Facebook's policies to do that. And their policy is such that says you can only tag human beings. You can only tag people, not objects or words. So at first I was a little like, how can you take that away? Right? That is
so
organic
limiting
behavior. But here was something that was my big takeaway from that summit. Facebook is really, and I really believe this, they're really trying to maintain the integrity of social media as a means for human connection. And they're really trying to maintain the integrity of Facebook as a place where people are connecting with one another. And it does come down to the person first. And all of the policies that they are developing and continuing to develop are all based on making sure that those people, users of Facebook, all of us, are having as best of an experience as we possibly can without being spammed. And that really is what it comes down to.
Does that include animals?
Animals are humans.
Let's do that.
I'm not sure if I really have one policy that I'm dying to change or anything, but I heard once someone said that when you fail in traditional media, like everyone knows it. You've seen a huge TV spot and it didn't go well. When you fail in social media, no one knows about it because nothing is shared and passed along. And while I totally agree with you, Mike, I wouldn't want to have this turn into like spam, but sometimes if you develop a campaign or something that's completely meaningful for the audience that you're going after, not to have some type of incentive or benefit based on the power of sharing, meaning a like, a share, a tweet, could all go to help benefit a brand, I think would be a cool policy to end up changing versus making any native functionality have any type of benefit to the brand, not the policy.
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily have one policy that's just. I was going to say the one that you said about the actual tagging of people, but I think that if we could change one thing, it would probably be more around the idea of it's really policy, the idea of the like, right, and that I believe that Facebook does have user experience first and foremost in mind. I believe that's sometimes a guise, but also I think that the idea that liking something isn't necessarily always a like. It's sometimes you're agreeing with something or you're curious about something that you may want to learn more about. And so brands kind of play in that strange place of